Chapter 33. A jumble of rocks stuck up above the water just off the shore at this end of the beach. Aaron and a tall, dark-haired man who had to be Noel were standing on it, arguing furiously. They must have climbed down onto the beach and then waded out onto the rocks. Probably to get away from everyone else so they could have yet another altercation in comparative privacy. "She's got a gun! She's got a gun!" A middle-aged woman in running shorts and a sports bra was stopped in the path just ahead of me. She had been the one to shout. Now she was peering through the trees that were crowding around the path here, looking anxiously out at the rocks. "She's got a gun!" she repeated when I came over to stand and stare beside her. Her voice had dropped from an alarmed cry to a shocked whisper. "She's pointing it right at him!" I squinted through the trees. It was hard to see clearly through the branches along the trail and the salt spray rising around the rocks, but it did look a lot like Aaron was pointing a small handgun at Noel. "Do you have a phone?" I whispered to the woman. Why were we whispering? Noel and Aaron couldn't hear us over the crashing of the waves and their own screaming words. But whispering felt like the right thing to do, as if we might disturb some delicate balance by speaking too loudly and plunge us all into ruin. "Yes!" The woman's voice was shaking. When she pulled her phone out of the pocket of her running shorts, her hand was shaking too. "Should I call 911? "Yes. Tell them where you are and that Aaron Carver is holding Noel Carver at gunpoint." The woman switched her stare from the rocks to me. "You know them?" "Yes, make that call. You got that?" I said into the phone to Alex. "Yes." His breathing was harsh over the phone speaker. "Frank and I are running back to the car right now. We'll be there as soon as we can. Are you or anyone else in immediate danger?" "I don't think I am." I tried to look up and down the beach. My view was hampered by the trees. I don't know about anyone else. "Right. See if you can clear the area. We'll be there soon." He hung up. The woman was now on the phone with 911. "Yes, the rocks at the north end of Whaler's Cove," she was saying, her voice still shaking. Yes, with a gun. What did you say their names are?" she asked me and held out her phone towards me. "Aaron Carver and Noel Carver," I said into the microphone. "I'm a friend of Aaron's. She went missing yesterday and we've been searching for her ever since. She might be not completely rational." "Could she be intoxicated, ma'am?" asked the dispatcher. "Yes, and she's a military veteran with extensive firearms training. She has a concealed carry permit. That's probably her registered handgun. He's got a gun!" the middle-aged woman cried, jerking the phone away from me in a convulsive motion of shock. Through the trees and the spray, I saw Noel raise something and point it at Aaron. A moment later, the sound of a gunshot cut through the crashing of the waves. Ma'am, are you still there? Ma'am, are you okay?" I grabbed the phone out of the other woman's hand. "Yes, we're fine. Looks like Noel is armed too. He's also a veteran with firearms training and extensive combat experience, FYI. But it looks like Aaron's still okay. Oh, shit!" Ma'am, are you all right? Are you still there?" I shoved the phone back in the other woman's hands. "Stay on the line with 911. I've got to go." A group of college kids, laughing and tossing a football back and forth, were walking down the beach straight towards the rocks. Why hadn't they noticed the gunshot? Oh, because they all had beer bottles in their hands. Those obviously weren't their first beers of the day, either. The path was on a low headland above the beach. There was no way onto the beach itself from where I was, other than jumping off a head-high drop onto rocks. Maybe not the greatest idea. The college kids were still walking obliviously towards where Aaron and Noel were now making irate gestures at each other with their guns. The wind was blowing off the water straight at me. If I tried to shout, it would blow my voice right back at me. The kids would never hear me. "How can I get down to the beach?" I asked the other woman. She looked at me, wild-eyed, her mouth open. Probably she'd set off for a pleasant jog along the cove, with no expectation of getting caught up in a gunfight. Now she didn't know how to handle it. Well, who would? "Stay on the line," I told her. "I've got to go try and stop them." I ran a few yards down the path. Jesus, my knee hurt. I stopped and looked over the edge of the trail. Could I scramble down from here? The kids were staggering as they came closer to the rocks. They looked up and caught sight of Aaron and Noel. "Turn around and run! Turn around and run!" But Aaron and Noel had both lowered their guns and gone back to shouting at each other. The kids pointed at them and laughed, and then started stumbling towards them again. "Hey!" I shouted. "Hey! You need to turn around!" The wind blew my words back into my mouth, making me choke on them. The kids didn't seem to hear them at all. "Okay, you can do this. It's less than 6 feet down. There are plenty of handholds. Aaron and Noel probably won't see you at all, and if they do, they're probably not going to be able to hit you from that distance, in this wind. You can do this." I lowered myself down onto my seat, dangled my feet off the edge, and felt for a foothold in the rocks of the cliff face I was going to climb. Cliff is strongly worded. It's more a sort of drop-off. A drop-off that's high enough to hurt you pretty bad if you lose your footing and go crashing onto those rocks below. I looked over the edge. The rocks at the bottom looked unpleasantly jagged. A fall from 6 feet onto them would be sure to leave me scraped and bleeding all over, and could be fatal if I landed wrong. Stop thinking those thoughts. Also, you've approached this the wrong way. You need to turn around so that you're facing the cliff. I twisted around gingerly so that I was face into the cliff. Turning my back on Aaron and Noel felt horribly exposed. I reminded myself that it would be almost impossible for them to hit me from here with a handgun, even if they were actively trying to. I made myself slide my foot down until it found another hold. Yay! This wasn't so bad. I was almost there. Now for the other foot. Oh, fuck. My knee really hurt. There. Got the next foothold anyway. And now for the next one, and the next one. Jesus Christ, had I re-torn my ACL? Arg! Yet another thing to hold against Aaron. Another step. Is that the ground? I looked down. Yep, just one more step, and I'd be on ground level. Still in a jumble of jagged, flesh-tearing rocks, but at ground level. Just put my foot down there, and then step away. Ah! My shriek of pain and surprise as the rock under my right foot gave away, forcing me to throw all my weight onto my left knee, accomplished what my shouting earlier had failed to do. The kids all looked in my direction. "Get away! Get away!" I made wild shooing motions at them. Instead of listening, they came lurching over to me at a half-jog, half-stagger. "You okay?" asked the one in front. He was tall and muscled and the picture of a golden California surfer dude, except for his bloodshot, beery eyes. "We have to get away from here, right now!" Surfer dude frowned in confusion. "Why?" "Because we might get shot. Come on." "Shot?" He looked around in comical, drunken alarm. "Yes! Now come on!" The whole group was looking around wildly in every direction but the right one. "Come on!" I repeated, and started walking away from the rocks. My knee buckled under me with every step. I bit my lip and kept grimly on. I couldn't see Aaron and Noel, but my back itched between my shoulder blades, expecting a shot at any moment. "What's wrong with you?" Surfer Dude had decided to come along. The others were straggling after us. Thank God. "I hurt my knee. Let's go faster." "You need me to carry you or something?" "No. Is there a park ranger here?" "Dunno. You sure you don't want me to carry you?" He grinned down at me. "You're a big girl, but I bet I could still pick you up." "I'm fine. Let's go faster." Whoa! I clutched at his arm as both knees buckled under me. What the heck? Had I torn the other ACL? What was that rumbling? "Earthquake!" The kids stopped and grabbed each other. For a second, they looked genuinely frightened. Then they started whooping and cheering. "Earthquake! Earthquake! Earthquake!" I pulled away from Surfer Dude and turned to see what was happening on the rocks. Aaron and Noel were both staggering on the wet, uneven surface. That didn't stop their furious argument. Erin raised her gun again. "No!" I screamed. The only thing my scream did was cover up the sound of the shot. Noel grabbed at his left arm. When he drew his hand away, it was covered in the bright red of fresh blood. He raised his left hand, the one with the gun in it. If the pain from the gunshot wound and the blood sheeting down his arm was making it more difficult to aim, he didn't show it. The rumbling grew louder. My knees gave way completely, and I went sprawling inelegantly onto all fours onto the rocky sand. There was another shot. From Noel's gun, I thought. Both of them staggered. Erin went down on one knee, clutching at her arm. Noel slipped, windmilled his arms, slipped again, and disappeared off the rocks into the water. Chapter 34. The ground under me gave a final ominous rumble and went still. I pushed myself back to my feet. My hands and knees were bleeding from the fall onto the rocky ground. I pressed my hands to my jeans to try to staunch the bleeding, and started limping to where Erin was crawling along the rocks, calling out, her voice drowned out by the wind and the waves. The waves were now crashing over the rocks, almost covering them. The tide was coming in. Soon Erin might be stranded from the beach, or washed away entirely. But she crawled along the shrinking rock pile in the opposite direction from the beach, searching frantically. For Noel, whom she just shot at. But shooting someone is different from leaving them to be swept out to sea and drowned. I looked around, searching for help. Sirens were wailing off in the distance. The cavalry was coming. Not soon enough. The college kids were scattering at the sound, shouting drunkenly at each other about getting caught with alcohol when half of them were underage. There was a large crowd of people on the other end of the beach, but they were a quarter mile away. "There's no one else. It has to be you." Gritting my teeth, I forced myself into a shambling, limping run over the stony beach to the pile of rocks where Erin was now crawling around to the backside. The rock pile was a couple dozen feet off the shore and connected to the main beach by a thin sort of isthmus. In low tide. The rising tide had now covered it completely. I would have to wade out over slippery, water-covered rocks if I wanted to reach Erin. Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe this is a stupid idea. They're both crazy, armed, and dangerous. Maybe I should just leave them to do their thing and let the police take care of it when they get here. "Noel! Noel! Oh my God, hang on! Oh my God, Noel, hang on!" I was close enough now to hear Erin's panicky voice from the other side of the rock pile. I stepped into the water. Jesus Christ, it was cold. I forced myself to put the other foot into it. Icy Pacific water promptly started wicking up the seams of my jeans. Maybe the cold would do my knee some good. I took another step, stepped on a piece of kelp, and almost went down. Some rescuer I was. Okay, another step, and another. Watch out for the kelp. Big wave coming in. Another step. Another piece of kelp. That rock's super slippery. Another big wave coming in. Made it! "No, Noel, Noel, hang on, hang on!" I couldn't see Erin from where I was, only hear her panicked cries. I clambered on hands and knees, the rough stone tearing more skin off my palms and shins, onto the rock pile, and started inching cautiously towards the back. "Erin!" I shouted as I came around the side. "Erin, it's Rowena! I'm here to help!" "Rowena! Rowena, thank God!" Erin showed no surprise that I was there. Her face was streaked with salt water and makeup, a garish, clownish mess with a touch of horror movie monster to it. No gun in her hands. Thank God. "Help me!" she cried. "Help me get him!" I sidled cautiously around the last rock between us. A wave crashed into the rock pile. It caught me at full force just as I was inching around a protruding boulder, drenching me from the waist down with bone-chillingly cold water and almost sweeping me off the rock. I clung to the boulder with my fingers, my feet, my knees, every square inch of body surface I could find. The wave receded, leaving me behind. After a second, I managed to release the death grip I had on the rock and take the final steps to the small ledge where Aaron was crouching. "There he is!" she shouted, pointing out into the water. I followed her pointing finger. Noel was half lying face down on a boulder about a dozen feet away from us. His arms were draped over it, his lower body floating in the water, and it was hard to tell if he was clinging to it for dear life or lying there senseless. His left arm was dripping blood. "He fell into the water, and then he almost made it back onto here. Then he got caught by a wave and ended up there," Aaron told me tearfully. Even over the strong scent of salt and iodine stirred up by the wind and the waves and the incoming tide, I could smell the alcohol in her breath and oozing from her pores. Vodka, unless I missed my guess. It was an odor I was very familiar with. Anyone who tells you vodka doesn't smell is lying. "Help is on the way," I told her. "He just has to hang on a little longer and then people will be here to get him." I wasn't sure the police would be much better equipped to get Noel than Aaron and I were, but maybe they had ropes or some kind of rescue gear that would enable them to get through the rising tide and crashing waves and haul Noel back without getting knocked down or swept away themselves. Another wave came in, even higher than the ones before. It broke over Noel and the rock he was draped on, hiding both of them completely in dark green water and white foam. Aaron screamed. The water receded with a rushing sound. Noel was still there. Aaron let out a choking sob of relief, but he was mostly off the rock now, with just his forearms draped over it. "Noel!" Aaron shouted. "Noel, you have to get over here!" Noel raised his head, feebly, then he dropped it back onto the rock. "Noel!" Aaron screamed. No response. "We have to get him," Aaron said. "How?" I asked. "We have to get him. He's going to drown if we don't. If he falls off the rock, there's a rip current just off the shore here. Good swimmers, strong swimmers, get swept out to sea all the time." "Are you a good swimmer?" I asked her. I had a brief moment of hope that she was actually a dynamite swimmer. She'd been in the Navy, right? Surely she was a better-than-average swimmer, in case of falling off an aircraft carrier or something. Maybe she'd been part of an initiative to integrate women into special forces units and had done lots of SEAL training. "I can barely swim even with 2 good arms," she said. She loosened the grip she had on her right arm. Blood promptly started leaking through her fingers and soaking her sleeve. "Well, shit," I said. Aaron almost giggled, just for a moment. Then her face went back to drunk and scared. "I wanted to kill him," she said. "I shot him, but now I can't bear to watch him die. We've got so much history, hurt each other so much, but I can't just let him drown. I can't." "Fair enough," I said. "So how are we going to save him?" "The water isn't actually that deep," Aaron said. "We should be able to walk out to him." We both looked at the water between us and Noel. During low tide, it was probably a charming tide pool, with crabs and sea urchins or whatever lived out here on this side of the world. Right now, it was a swirling maelstrom of foam and waist-high water. Technically, yes, it was shallow enough for us to walk through, but I didn't like my chances, especially if a big wave came in. "I don't think we'll actually make it," I said. "We can't just leave him." "No, but we have to act in a way that is likely to end with all of us still alive. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time and energy. And I wasn't planning on dying today. Alex always forgets to feed Fevroni if I'm not there to remind him." Aaron let out another choking half-laugh, half-sob. "What about that way?" She pointed slightly to the left. We both looked at where she was pointing. There was a rock spine that ran along the edge of the tide pool, forming a kind of shelf. A shelf of jagged, kelp and slime-covered rocks. "I think we'll slip, go down, and smash our brains out the first time we get hit by a wave," I said. We both looked right. The water was calmer in that direction, but deeper. Swimming would definitely be required. The water beyond it had an ominous smoothness that suggested a strong current just below the surface. "Are you a good swimmer?" Erin asked hopefully. No. I'd balked at swimming in the muddy, cottonmouth-infested waters of the local swimming holes of my Georgia childhood. I had learned just enough at the local public pool to know a crawl from a breaststroke, and hopefully not drown immediately if I ever fell overboard. But I hadn't swum in the better part of 20 years. Now didn't seem like a good time to start up again. Another big wave came in. When it drained away, Noel was hanging onto the rock with only one hand. He lifted his head and looked at us. Or maybe the water lifted his head for him. Then he dropped it again. "Rocks it is," I said. You think you can make it?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not if you want to get him back to shore. I'm pretty sure I won't be able to carry him by myself. My knee's pretty wrecked." "Okay." Erin took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. "Let's go. Maybe you should go first, and I'll hold on to you. We don't want to get separated. You don't have any rope, do you?" "No, I didn't pack for this when I left the house this afternoon. I don't know what I was thinking." Erin made another of those choking half-sobs, half-laughs. "I'll hold onto your waistband then, and we'll go nice and slow, and then we'll get Noel, and we'll head off that way." She pointed along the rocky spine leading back to shore. "And we should be fine. I don't think we'll get caught in a riptide if we go that way. We're practically at the low tide mark here anyway. The current only starts on the other side of these rocks." Where Noel is hung in the air unspoken. "Sounds great," I said. "Let's go." Chapter 35. The good thing about being soaked to the skin by that earlier wave was that wading over to Noel wasn't going to make me any wetter. It was, I discovered as soon as I took that first step into the water, going to make me a lot colder. Even if I didn't fall and smash my head on a rock or get carried out to the open ocean, I might develop hypothermia before I could make it back to shore. Noel was probably developing hypothermia already. Between that and the blood loss, it was no wonder he was only marginally conscious. For the first couple of steps, the water was only calf deep. The rocks were slippery and slimy, but they were also rough enough that there was still plenty of traction. Erin was inching along behind me steadily. Maybe the cold was counteracting the alcohol. When I put my foot down for the third step, there was nothing there. My left knee, unready and unable to take my full weight, buckled. "Rowena!" Erin hauled on my waistband with surprising strength, keeping me from going down entirely. Once I'd gotten my balance back, I felt around with my right foot. It found the next step, a foot lower than the previous one. I was now in water above my knees. When Erin followed me into it, it was almost to her hips. We stopped and braced ourselves for a wave. I tucked my face into my arm as it struck. That kept water from going up my nose and down my mouth. It did nothing to stop my feet from leaving the ground as the wave lifted me up and then dropped me into the suddenly shallow water, causing me to stagger and almost go down again. "Noel!" Erin's voice was a painful shriek in my ear. "Noel, hang on!" I looked over to him, to where he had been. For a heart-stopping moment, I couldn't see him. Then I caught a glimpse of his hand, still clutching feebly at the rock. His face was half in the water. He was going to drown in minutes, maybe seconds, if he hadn't drowned already. I took another step. The water rose almost to my waist. When I pushed off for the next step, my feet lifted off the rocks and I floated, drifting right towards the foaming tidal pool and that ominously smooth water beyond it. Erin's hand on my waistband stopped me. I flailed and doggy-paddled to a rock jutting out of the water ahead of me, grabbing it with both hands and pulling both me and Erin across the deep spot to its relative safety. "Just a little farther," I said. Erin nodded. Her makeup was mostly washed off, leaving her face pale and naked, her eyes big with fear. No, not fear. Those were the dilated pupils of a junkie finally getting her fix. "Do you want me to go in front?" she asked. Now that we were really in trouble, she seemed calm, almost happy, like she couldn't function normally without megadoses of adrenaline coursing through her system. No, let's not mess things up. We're only a couple of steps away from Noel. Ready? She nodded again. We let go of the rock and tried to move towards Noel, who was separated from us by no more than 6 feet. 6 feet of water that rushed in and out of the tide pool with every wave. We could cross it if we timed it exactly right. Otherwise, we would very likely get dashed onto the bottom of the tide pool and drowned, or carried out to sea and drowned, or just drowned. "We need to go between waves," I shouted back at Erin. "We'll only have a few seconds. Can you do it?" "Yes, can you?" "Do I have a choice?" She almost grinned. "I can see why Alex loves you," she said. "Sure," I said. "Okay, the wave is going now." The wave rushed foamingly back, revealing pebble-strewn sand between us and Noel's rock. I bolted forward, jerking Erin along behind me. My left knee buckled every time I tried to push off from the waterlogged sand, but I made 1 step, 2. My fingers closed on the rough stone, and I started pulling myself up the rock as fast as I could. Behind me, Erin shrieked. It didn't sound like fear. It sounded like exultation. I looked back, hoping that rescue was on the way. It wasn't. Erin was still standing in the sand, waiting for me to climb high enough to get out of her way. She'd let go of my waistband so that I could climb. The next wave was coming in. It was higher than our heads, more than twice as high as the previous waves. It was going to break right over the top of the rock. If it caught Erin while she was still in the trough, it would smash her on the rocks or sweep her away for sure. "Climb!" I screamed, and began scrambling as fast as I could towards the top of the rock. My pants tore. The skin on my palms and fingers tore. I kept scrambling. Behind me, I could hear Erin scrambling after me, cursing under her breath and climbing as hard as she could. I made it to the top of the rock. Noel was below me, just out of reach. "Noel!" I shouted. "Noel! Grab my hand!" He lifted his head. Good. Still conscious. Sort of. "Grab my hand!" I shouted, stretching my right hand towards him as far as it could reach. He saw the wave. His muzzy eyes widened. He reached for me. Reached and fell short. On the other side of the rock, I could feel Erin come up behind me and throw her arms around my waist, pinning us both down. "Grab my hand!" I shouted again. The wave broke against the rock. Noel stretched, and clasped my wrist just as the water hit him. I could feel him float free of the rock as the water lifted him, but it pressed me down like a giant hand, grinding my face against the rough surface of the rocks, squeezing the breath out of my lungs, forcing water where only air should be. It rushed away. I was still on the rock, still breathing. Erin's arms were still around me, and Noel's hand was still clasping my wrist. "Now!" Erin cried. "Now, Noel, now!" And then she was letting go of me and slithering past me on the slimy, skin-tearing stone and grabbing Noel and hauling him up out of the water. By the time the next wave hit, we were all clinging to each other on the top of the rock. "You're bleeding," Erin said to me when it had receded. "Your face is bleeding." I touched it. Ouch. I think I got a little road rash from the rock. At least the cold salt water should slow the bleeding and fight infection. "Yeah." Erin looked reflexively down at her right arm. The bleeding had slowed to a trickle. We both looked over at Noel. A red tendril was snaking down his left sleeve. "I don't think any of us are going to bleed out in the next few minutes, but it would be nice to get out of here," I said. We looked back towards the beach. It was only a few dozen yards away. A few dozen yards of slippery, jagged rock, crashing waves, and currents that could catch you and carry you out to sea before you knew what happened. "Do you think we could wait here until help arrives?" I asked. "Maybe—" "Ah!" Another of the super big waves was bearing down on us. We clutched at each other in the rock as it crashed into us, lifting us off the rock for a terrifying moment before grinding us back down into it as it forced its way into our mouths and noses. "The tide is still coming in," Aaron said between coughs, once the wave was gone. "I think we won't be able to stay here much longer." I looked over the edge of the rock. The water was now almost twice as high up its side as it had been when we'd set out towards it. Another couple big waves, and it would be covered completely. "So, thinking about it realistically," I said, "what do you think our chances are of making it back to shore?" We surveyed the path back to the beach. "Not great," said Aaron, "but better than our chances of staying on this rock." "I hate that you're right," I said. "Okay, how do we do it?" We both looked over at Noel. He smiled at us weakly. His dark hair was flopping across his forehead, changing his sharp widow's peak from sinister to boyishly vulnerable. His blue eyes, 2 shades lighter than Aaron's and less green than mine, were still muzzy and strange, and he was shivering and swaying as he sat. A combination of blood loss, hypothermia, and a blow to the head, maybe on top of alcohol. Didn't look like we were going to get a lot of help from that corner. "I think," said Aaron, "if we cut across that way, we might be able to make it to a shallow spot pretty quickly." She pointed diagonally towards the beach, to where the surf was breaking on what looked like a shallow shelf of sand. "Yeah," I said. "Do you think we can actually get there?" Between us and the shallow sand was the spine of rocks we'd just traversed, and then a deep channel carved out by the tide and the waves every time they sluiced over the rocks. It was probably less than 10 feet across. 10 feet was a very long way to go through that kind of current. Another wave broke over our rock, choking us. When it receded, the water was still lapping at our feet. "I guess we don't have much of a choice," I said, "unless you've suddenly come up with a better plan." "No," said Aaron. "Have you?" "No. Okay, let's do this. How about you go first, and then Noel, and then I'll take up the rear?" "Maybe you should go first," said Aaron. "You're the tallest. You have the longest reach. You can grab stuff and pull us to safety the best." I couldn't argue with that. I was 6 inches taller than Aaron, at least. Noel was my height, and judging by the biceps I could see through the tear in his sleeve, probably stronger. But he seemed too out of it to do anything other than follow along. "Okay," I said. "Okay, well, here we go. Do you understand?" I asked Noel. He nodded. Not in a way that gave me a lot of confidence, but it was the best I was going to get. I looked down at the channel we'd crossed to get onto the rock. It was now knee-deep in water even between waves. "We're going to have to be quick crossing that," I said. "Really quick. I'll start down as soon as the next wave starts to recede. You follow me as fast as you can. Try to hold on to me and each other if you can. Ready?" "Let's do this," said Aaron. Then she actually grinned, a full-on grin. With all her makeup washed away and her hair in her face, she looked wild, fierce, the brave warrior she'd always been meant to be. I found myself grinning back against my will. The next wave broke over us. As soon as I could breathe and open my eyes again, I started scooting down the side of the rock. I hit the channel while the water was still thigh-deep and moving quickly. I lowered myself into it anyway. I was so cold my hands and feet had gone numb, and my stomach felt like it was full of ice. At least I wasn't feeling a lot of pain. Even my face didn't hurt much. I let the water lift me off the bottom and carry me along. I couldn't swim against the current, but I could angle my movement just enough to land on a rock on the far side. "Come on!" I shouted back. "Quickly!" I pulled myself higher onto the rocky spine, out of the way of Aaron and Noel. The water was now at its lowest ebb. They entered it together, holding hands. It wasn't deep enough for them to swim, but it still tugged them away from the shore, towards my rocky perch. I reached out and grabbed Aaron's outstretched hand, just as the water started moving in the opposite direction in front of the next oncoming wave. Between the two of us, we pulled Noel up onto the rocks, just as the wave filled the channel with a sandy, pebbly whoosh. "Okay," I said, once we were all perched there. "Stage 1 is complete. Oh, and the cavalry have arrived." Police cars were pouring into the parking lot on the other end of the beach, lights flashing and sirens blaring. How could they have only just arrived? I had heard them coming before I'd set off on my rescue mission. It seemed like several eternities had passed since then, but in fact it must have been less than 5 minutes. "Oh, fuck!" Aaron and Noel said together. It was the first word Noel had spoken. I said, "Have you actually done anything illegal? Like, so illegal that you'd seriously consider throwing yourself into a rip current in order to avoid the police?" "No," said Noel, at the same time as Aaron said, "Yes." "We haven't done anything illegal today," Noel said. He was chattering his teeth and slurring his words, but he seemed more lucid than he had earlier. "Maybe a little unlawful discharging of firearms, but no one was hurt." "Other than ourselves," said Aaron. He shrugged. "Whatever. You're gonna press charges." She shook her head. "Me neither, even though you fucking shot me in my left arm when you know I'm left-handed, you crazy bitch." He smiled at her, his face full of what seemed like a sick kind of affection. "So, slap on the wrist, fine. No biggie. I'll cover it for you if you can't. And we probably shouldn't be out here. Another slap on the wrist, fine, at worst. Nothing we can't handle." "But," said Aaron. "Listen." Noel was speaking more and more coherently. "Listen, Aaron, the past doesn't matter. It's all in the past. Forgive and forget. Isn't that what you said you wanted?" "Yes," said Aaron, but nothing. Forgive and forget, Aaron. That's an order." "You don't get to give me orders," said Aaron. "You never did, whatever you seem to think." "Well, somebody sure fucking should. You can't function unless someone's giving you orders. His words were swallowed by another extra big wave smashing into us and choking us. "I think this rock is about to go underwater too," I said. I looked around. We were at the highest point on the rock spine. The police were getting out of their vehicles and surveying the situation. An ambulance came screaming into the parking lot, followed closely by Frank's car. All extremely cheering sights. All a quarter-mile away. By the time they made it to our end of the beach, there wouldn't be any rock for us to sit on anymore. They really needed to call out the Coast Guard and send some kind of a boat for us. I looked back towards deep water. No sign of any boats, Coast Guard or otherwise. And the water here was so rough I wasn't sure a boat would be able to get to us. "Maybe we should try to make it to shore," I said. We peered over the edge of what was left of the rocky spine. The channel between us and the beach had widened to at least 12 feet of foaming and churning water. "I wonder how deep that is," said Aaron. "Probably deep enough we'll have to swim," I said. "Fuck it," said Noel. His voice was casual, like we were having a conversation over where to have dinner. "If I'm going to die, it's going to be fighting my way back to dry land, not cowering on this rock. You with me?" "Yes," said Aaron, taking his hand. Okay," I said. "I guess." Noel pushed himself off the rocks before any of us could think better of it, pulling Aaron along with him. "Wait!" I called. "The wave!" Too late. A wave, this time only medium-sized, but still big enough, came whooshing down the channel, tumbling sand and pebbles and fist-sized rocks at its bottom. It struck Noel and Aaron squarely in the side, picking them both up and tumbling them in its grip. They disappeared in its foam. "Aaron!" I shouted. "Aaron!" Aaron's head popped up above the surface. Noel's popped up a moment later. They both started swimming towards the far side. Okay, nothing I could do for them, and nothing they could do for me, since they'd left me here to shift for myself. "I can do this. I can swim 12 feet. I'll just be a bit smarter than they were about it. I waited until the current was moving the other way as the wave was sucked back out into deep water. Then I stepped into it. It was thigh-deep, knee-deep, calf-deep. It was now the ebb between waves. I forced my way through the water, a nightmarishly slow, laborious struggle to move forward at all. The current moved against my legs, in the opposite direction. Another wave was coming in. I looked up. Another of the giant waves. The water was already hip-deep and moving faster, floating my feet out of their tenuous grip on the sand. I launched myself forward onto my belly, forcing my exhausted arms into a pathetic approximation of a crawl stroke as the current picked up speed, rushing me towards a rocky tide pool. I arrowed towards the other side, swimming harder than I'd ever swum in my life, reaching like I was stretching towards the wall in the gold medal race at the Olympics, straining. Rowena, grab my hand! Aaron caught one wrist. Noel caught the other. They both heaved, dragging me onto the shallow, sandy shelf where the water was barely above our knees. Come on, Aaron said. Just a few more feet. Our arms around each other, we staggered through the surf until we were on dry sand, surrounded by the detritus of the high tide line. Aaron and Noel let go of me to hug each other. I dropped onto my knees and brought my hands to my face. It was wet, with seawater, but also with blood. And tears. The tears had started, and I couldn't stop them. Chapter 36. Aaron, there you are! Alex was running up to us. Frank was half a pace behind. The police were approaching more circumspectly. Aaron! Alex dropped down on his knees beside her. You're all right? Alex, you came for me! She threw her arms around his neck and clung to him as desperately as she'd clung to the rocks when the waves had tried to take us out to sea. I'll always come for you. Frank came over and knelt down in front of me. You okay, Rowena? Hey, let's have a look at that pretty face of yours. He peeled my hands away from my face with surprising gentleness. Then he winced when he saw me. Hey! He shouted towards the police officers cautiously approaching. We need medical attention here. I'm fine. I always cry after something like this. Noel's the one who needs help. I think he hit his head, and he and Aaron were both shot. Not badly, but they should get checked out. Fuck 'em, said Frank. They had it coming. They did it to themselves, didn't they? Well, yes. I had stopped crying. I wiped off my face. Ouch! That really hurt. I started to worry that maybe I'd been permanently scarred. I didn't normally think of myself as a vain person, but the idea of a permanent facial scar was not appealing. Don't you worry, Frank told me. You'll heal up good as new in a few weeks. Mark my words. Hey, Miller, we need to switch women. Get your hands off my girlfriend and come take care of your own. Alex jerked away from Aaron. I wasn't, he began. Yeah, whatever. Get your ass over here and take care of Ro. She's pretty banged up. Hey, you! We need a fucking medic over here. The lead police officer, a brawny Hispanic man with slicked back black hair and an expression that said he didn't stand for being bossed around by civilians and arrogant white dudes, said we all had to be checked for weapons first. When he saw my face, though, he immediately radioed for the paramedics to hurry up and get out here. It's not that bad, I said. It's the others who need it. They've both been shot, and I think Noel hit his head. Then I had to stop, because my face really was hurting like the dickens. I started to worry that maybe I'd cracked a cheekbone. The news about the others being shot reminded the police about firearms. Frank and Alex were moved out of the way, and Aaron, Noel, and I got patted down and cuffed. I told myself that being handcuffed by the police was a new and interesting experience, and I should be grateful for the chance to have it. I remained unconvinced, though. Maybe I would feel more grateful once the cuffs were off and my face didn't hurt so damn much. Aaron and Noel, it turned out, had both lost their guns in the water at some point. Once the police discovered there were no loose weapons lying around, they got a lot happier and allowed the paramedics to come check us out. Alex came over while the police were dealing with Noel and Aaron. He insisted on holding my hand. "I didn't mean to ignore you," he said while we waited for the paramedics to check Noel for concussion. I was so worried about Aaron. I was sure you'd be fine. You always are. Fuck, your face looks bad." "It's fine," I told him. "I understand. I would have done the same. And I'm fine." When the paramedics got to me, though, they made serious faces when they examined my cheek. Their faces got even more serious when I tried to stand and promptly collapsed onto Alex's shoulder. "My knee," I explained. "I think I re-tore my ACL." A few minutes later, I was lying in a stretcher, being carried back to the parking lot. I had not been at all enthusiastic about being stretchered off the beach, especially cuffed, doubly especially in front of the gathering crowd of gawkers. Some of them were recording the entire thing on their phones. Terrific. But the police and paramedics and Alex had all been very insistent, and common sense told me they were right. Walking would only cause more damage. Plus, it hurt like the devil. I wasn't sure I'd be able to make it without crying. Again. So I let them carry me away. Alex held my hand. He also kept glancing over as Aaron was escorted into one of the waiting police vehicles. "You'll see her again soon," the paramedic on his side of the stretcher told him. "You're all going to end up at the same hospital." "Oh, yeah. I'll be staying with Rowena anyway," said Alex. He gave my hand a squeeze. He also kept looking at Aaron. When the ambulance doors closed behind me, he was still looking at her. Chapter 37. I must have been really out of it, because it only occurred to me halfway through the ambulance ride that I couldn't possibly afford it. An ambulance ride, out of network. And the insurance company would probably say that a scraped cheek and an injured knee were not ambulance-worthy anyway. I could end up owing thousands for this little adventure. Thousands I didn't have. Damn, damn, damn! "Noel can pay for it," Alex said when I brought it up. "He fucking well should, don't you think? And if he tries to cheap out on you, sue the shit out of him. He damn well deserves it." "I feel," I said, "that there's a lot of backstory here that I don't know." "Damn right." Alex glanced over at the paramedics. "I'll fill you in when you're feeling better." Several extremely unfun and no doubt unbelievably expensive hours later, I was released. A detective had taken a statement from me and removed the handcuffs, which was nice. Doctors had poked and prodded and scanned me, and replaced the cuffs with their own restraining devices, in the form of a hip-to-ankle leg brace and a bandage covering most of the right side of my face. Nothing had been broken, I was assured. The damage to my face was all superficial. It would hurt like hell for a while, but it should heal up with little to no scarring. I'd developed mild hypothermia, but my temperature was already coming back to normal. The knee was more concerning. The ER doctor had bitten her lip and sucked on her teeth when she'd examined it, and told me I needed to get it examined by an orthopedist ASAP. "I'm not recommending emergency surgery," she told me, "but you might need it soon." "I'm supposed to drive back to Georgia tomorrow," I said. She smiled a not at all funny smile. "You're not going to be driving anywhere anytime soon with this knee, I can promise you that. Especially, I hope your car's an automatic." "No," I said. "Stick." She shook her head and told me to get used to California life for a while. "Sure," I said. "Of course. That's only sensible." Now I was back in Alex's apartment, lying on his stained and faded couch, plotting how to get out of here as soon as possible. "You know the doctor's right, Rowena," Alex told me as he dished up the takeout Chinese he'd ordered. "You can't possibly drive for days, maybe weeks." "Yeah, but..." "When do classes start? Not for another couple of weeks, right?" "Yeah, but..." "So you can stay here for another week at least. And if you still don't look ready to drive, get a plane. What about my car? I asked. What about Fevronia? I'll drive them to Georgia myself. When? You don't have a break. I'll take time off. You were just saying how things are going to be crazy with Aaron out of commission for a while, I pointed out. I don't fucking care. I'll leave anyway. I don't want you to have to do that. Fuck, will you just, for once? The plate Alex was gesturing angrily at me with fell out of his hand, smashing on the tiled kitchen floor. My chest filled with a deep, rumbling tremble, as if something inside it were breaking, as if the whole world were coming apart. Earthquake, said Alex. Another fucking earthquake. He laughed. For a moment I thought I'd developed sudden onset Parkinson's or some shit like that. He looked at the plate shards at his feet. Fuck, let me get something to sweep this up. The rumbling had stopped. I took a deep breath and wiped my clammy hands on my shirt. It was okay. I was okay. Everything was okay. Shit, said Alex. I think that crack above the table's gotten bigger, and we only have one plate now. He shrugged and grinned. Guess we'll have to share. It'll be romantic. Yeah, I said. Maybe we should eat on the couch. He shrugged. Sounds good to me. And you can tell me about Noel, I said. About Noel and Aaron. He froze. Then he nodded. Yeah, I probably should, huh? It's only right. You probably can't drink with those pain meds, right? Right, I said. Mind if I do? No, of course not. Feel free to grab a beer. He started rummaging through the corner cupboard, where the remnants of unused kitchen supplies went to die. I think this story calls for something harder than beer. He pulled out a tumbler and a half-empty bottle of scotch. He knocked back a substantial shot of the scotch before we even started eating. Then he knocked back another respectable portion over the meal. By the time we got to the fortune cookies, he was drunker than I'd ever seen him. Maybe it was dulling the pain on the inside. From the outside, it only looked to be making it worse. Okay, he said. He poured himself another portion of scotch, large enough that I felt slightly drunk just looking at it. Or maybe it was the fumes coming off him in the glass. Maybe it would help dull my pain as well. I guess I gotta tell you, but you gotta promise me, I don't know, no judgment, I guess. No judgment for Erin. She's already had more than enough. Sure, I said. Of course. You can tell me anything. Great. Okay, it's like this. Malcolm, Erin's uncle, adopted Noel when he was 13. Malcolm only had 2 girls, and he was desperate for a son. So he found a kid who looked kind of like him and needed a good home, and he took him in. So far, so good, right? I was hoping this was going to be a happy story, I said, but now I'm worried. You should be. So at first it all seemed to be going well. You know, you hear horror stories about adopting older kids from troubled homes all the time, but there was none of that from Noel. He had a quote-unquote troubled background, but he acted pretty decent, didn't give them any problems. At least, not according to Erin. Not until his junior year of high school. Oh dear, I said. Yeah, he was a star for both the football and soccer teams. Erin was a year younger than him, and was hanging out with him, going everywhere with him. I think she had a thing for him even then. I said. And then something bad happened to her. Real bad. She never told me all the exact details, but I'm sure we can both guess. It involved the soccer team and a lot of underage drinking. Was Noel directly involved? I asked. Alex shrugged. I don't know. I don't know that Erin knows, but he was present or complicit or something at least. But it just made Erin even more fixated on him. From what I've gathered, she was already fucked up before then. Like I said, poor little rich girl whose parents didn't give a shit about her, all that crap. And I've always kind of wondered if her dad was, abusive in, a sexual way. Anyway, she was even more fucked up after what happened in high school, and who wouldn't be? But it didn't break her obsession with Noel. You think she's obsessed with him? I asked. He made a maybe yes, maybe no motion. She sure as fuck was 15 years ago. Completely fixated on him, even when she was with me. And let me tell you, once I figured that out, it did nothing for my self-esteem. But we're not here to listen to me talk about my problems. And I thought she'd gotten over it. I guess not. Yeah, I said. Guess not. Anyway, no charges were pressed or anything, but there was enough of a stink around those boys that their sports scholarships failed to materialize when it came time for college. And Noel enlisted instead of enrolling. I think. I don't know him that well, but I think he felt guilty over what had happened, and this was his way of trying to atone. He enlisted, and then re-upped, made a whole career out of it. Was that why Erin enlisted? I asked. I think so. She wanted to do whatever he did, but she also wanted to prove herself to him, do one better than him, or something. I think they were on the outs at the time. It's like she loves him and she hates him, and she doesn't know what to do about it. She wanted to do something that would keep them symbolically close but physically apart. So she joined the Navy, since he was Army. Makes as much sense as anything, I said. Yeah. And for a while it seemed like she was getting her shit together. She started seeing me, and I don't want to make too much of myself as a knight in shining armor, but it really did seem to help her. And she tried to put all that old shit behind her, and then they ran into each other again. At the place you're probably not supposed to tell me about, I supplied. The place Heather is so keen to find out about. Yeah, there. You should have seen her when he came walking into her office, white as a ghost. I thought she was going to pass out in front of us, but she didn't. Instead, he took a long drink, straight from the bottle. I hoped he didn't pass out himself. Alex was only an inch or two taller than me, and slim. On a good day, I was sure I could move him without too much difficulty. But today was not a good day. I wasn't sure I could even move myself right now. Instead, they started. I don't even know what the fuck they started. She kept swearing to me they weren't seeing each other. Not like that. But they sure as fuck were spending a lot of time together. And then... He fell silent. I put my hand on his thigh. He laid his hand on top of mine and squeezed it gratefully. You gotta understand, he told me. Noel grew up poor. Before he was adopted, he didn't have a very good life. I'm sure, I said. And he didn't want that for himself ever again. He was determined to be rich. He was as obsessed with that as Erin was with him. He fell silent again. Did he find something out? I finally asked. Something to do with the Oil for Food program. Something that enabled him to make a lot of money. Yeah. Something that came up in one of the interrogations. And then he got Erin involved in it. I see, I said. Yeah, so I don't know the full story, but it seems like they were asking people about it, making that the focus of their interrogations. And then you found out, I said. Yeah, not at first. Not until they'd been doing it a while, made a bunch of money. Strike that. Noel made a bunch of money. Erin was doing it all for him, and I was doing the paperwork for both of them. I started to notice stuff that didn't quite make sense, stuff that didn't add up. Heather told me about the confrontation, I said, between you, Erin, and another man I'm guessing was Noel, when you arranged for a prisoner to be released. Yeah, poor guy. He shouldn't have been there. He wasn't any guiltier than anyone else. He just knew how they could get their hands on a giant pile of cash. Erin, I couldn't believe it when I saw him. I couldn't believe she'd do that to another human being, especially not for money. For fucking money. She wasn't doing it for money, I said gently. She was doing it for love. Yeah, and that was even worse. Because she did it for love for some other guy who treated her like crap, who'd maybe raped her when she was still a kid, who was using her now to make him rich. You know, she did all the dirty work. I mean, she was the one running the interrogation booth. She was the one torturing people. She was the one who sold her soul so that he could buy fine wines and fancy cars and whatever else the fuck he thought he wanted. Is that how he got his business going? I asked. High Energy Solutions, with the money he made from that. Alex shrugged. I guess so. I think he got the idea then, and then got it off the ground when he came back as a private contractor. But I didn't see any of that directly. I got transferred out of there right after our big bust-up. I think that was his doing. But that was okay. Anything to get me out of that hellhole. I went back home and let everyone thank me for my service and tell me what a hero I'd been. And every time, I died a little inside. I ran my fingers through his and squeezed. He squeezed back. Tears were running down his face. He didn't seem to notice, but I did. I sure as hell noticed that here he was, crying over Aaron again. And then Aaron got back and we tried to make it work, but Noel was always between us. What she'd done was always between us. She couldn't forgive me for not being able to forgive her. I tried. I really tried. But I couldn't. And it wasn't the torture. I was part of that too. I had to forgive her for that. But the fact that she was doing it for another man, so that another man could get rich, that I couldn't get over. And she couldn't get over that. I'd be holding her back, trying to keep her from running off and shooting Noel because she hated him so much. And then I'd be holding her back, trying to keep her from running after him because she loved him so much. And eventually I was just holding her back. And I lost her. The one thing in my life I couldn't bear to lose, and I lost her. I'm sorry, I said. Alex gave me a sideways look. I'm pretty drunk, he said, but I'm still sober enough to know that if I remember this at all tomorrow, I'm going to be cringing pretty fucking hard about how I cried like a girl. Shit, I didn't mean it like that. And poured out all my feelings about another woman to you. I told you, I said. You can tell me anything. I don't know how I feel about that. I think jealousy might be more appropriate right now. I didn't say I wasn't jealous, I said. I didn't say I didn't want to scratch Aaron's eyes out. But I still meant it when I said you could tell me anything. Okay. He lifted my hand, still intertwined with his, to his lips and kissed it. So anyway, he said after a moment, Aaron and I lost touch, because I said we had to stop fucking up each other's lives. But then we got back in touch, as you know, and I was with you, and she was with Frank. I thought maybe all that old shit was behind us. As much as it could be. None of us will ever be free of it, or each other. I'm tied to Aaron because of it, and I'm also tied to Frank, and even to Noel as well. We share this thing I fucking hate that we share, but we do. We're kind of brothers or some shit because of it. But then, I only found out about Noel being back in her life recently. This summer, actually. She told me, last month she told me, that he was in California, back in San Diego where they'd both grown up, and they were back in touch. I guess she'd gone searching for him last year, when I showed back up in her life. That made her go seeking Noel out. So this is kind of my fucking fault. And they finally got back together or something back in May, right before what happened with Frank, before the shooting. And then afterwards she turned to him even more. I don't know what was going through her head then, but she went looking for help, and she found him. Yeah, I said, and I'd clean forgotten the whole Frank shooting her thing. It kind of got swept away by all the other craziness. Yeah, really. You know, I kept thinking that Frank did it on purpose, that it wasn't an accident like they said it was. It wouldn't be the first time she'd covered up for a man who'd hurt her, after all. But now I'm thinking it wasn't just an accident. Frank and Aaron are both experienced firearms users. Frank wouldn't just shoot his girlfriend in the breast by mistake. But if they started arguing... Yeah, I said. Arguing about you, perhaps, or about Noel. Yeah, said Alex. I don't think it was intentional on Frank's part, but it wasn't good either, and it made him yet another man who hurt her. Kinda makes me wonder about myself, you know what I mean? Maybe that's why things didn't work out between you, I said. Because you didn't want to hurt her. She didn't know what to make of that. Maybe she only knows how to be in relationships with abusive men. And then you came along, and she didn't know what to do. I hate that thought. I especially hate that I think you're right. So anyway, then Heather started coming after her about, you know, and then, I don't know. I don't know what she and Noel were planning. I don't know either, I said. But, well... You think they were planning to run away together? Alex asked. Something like that. And, I don't know how true it is, but I don't know if Jeanette and Geraldine at the B&B said anything about it. But they were passing themselves off as being on their honeymoon. I don't know if they actually got married or not, but... Shit! Alex was squeezing my hand so hard my fingers were starting to turn white. Loosen your grip, I told him, before you break my fingers. What? Oh, shit. Sorry about that. But fuck! Do you really think they're married? Or planning to get married? Would she really do something that fucked up? You're the one who knows her best, I said. But from my perspective, it seems likely. Yeah, fuck. Fuck! I know, I said. She can't marry him. She can't. That's not something we get to decide, I said. She can't. I can't stand for her to marry him. I can't go through that again. I still... I think we should go to bed, I said. What? Oh, shit, yeah, you're probably completely wiped. Yeah, I said. And that was true. But the real reason I wanted to go to bed wasn't because I was tired. It was because I had known, with sickening certainty, that if I didn't stop him, Alex was about to blurt out that he still loved Aaron. I knew that was true. I just wasn't ready to hear him say it. I'd told him he could tell me anything, but, it turned out, there were limits. Let's go to bed, I said. Chapter 38. The next morning brought the arrival of Frank, bearing news. Hey, Ro, he said when he came into the apartment. No, sit. Don't get up on my account. You look like shit. Gee, thanks. Although, I couldn't argue with his assessment. The whole right side of my face was bruised and swollen, and when I checked under the bandage, there was a lurid scrape that was developing nasty scabs. My left knee was also swollen, and couldn't stand having so much as an ounce of weight put on it. That's what you get for being a hero, he said. He gave me an assessing look, that unexpected intelligence glinting in his eyes. You know, I didn't take you for the heroic kind at first. I thought you were just one of them liberal intellectual elites, smart enough in your own way, but ready to lecture me about safe spaces and microaggressions and cry whenever anyone contradicted you. Uh-huh, I said. But you really came through when it counted. And you might... Where's Miller? Getting breakfast. Alex had run out 5 minutes earlier, on a quest for food. Since I had been planning to leave first thing this morning, and he'd been in too much of a funk to go shopping, we'd let the kitchen get pretty bare. But now that I was going to be stuck here for another week at least, unable even to go out to restaurants, grocery shopping was essential. Yeah, guess he'll be cooking and cleaning for you for a while, huh? Looks like it, I said. You gonna be able to make it back to Georgia in time for classes? I hope so, I said. Tough cookie like you? Course you will. And in the meantime, you might have to come through for Alex as well as yourself. 'Cause I think he's gonna be hurting pretty bad for a while over all this Aaron shit. Yeah, I said. How about you? He shrugged. She's hot, I won't lie. I always had a thing for her. But she was stuck on Noel. And Alex. I was always third place for her. He grinned at me. But third place is still on the podium. Uh-huh, I said. But looks like Mr. Gold Medal is back. You know, I never could stand that motherfucker. Miller tell you how we know each other. He's told me a little, I said. Yeah, probably more than he should have, but whatever. I don't give a fuck anymore. Anyway, first time I laid eyes on that motherfucker, I wanted to pop him in the fucking mouth. Too bad I didn't, huh? Would it have stopped him? I asked. Frank grinned some more. No, it would have felt pretty fucking sweet, though. But Aaron still would have gone back to him anyway. Yeah, I said. And, you know, I felt bad about what I got her mixed up in. It was my fault. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. I brought her in because I thought she was smart, and hell, because I thought she was hot. And she brought Miller with her. Poor guy. She keeps dumping him in the shit, huh? Yep, I said. Frank gave me a sideways look. You don't like her much, do you? Nope, I said. Good. Sometimes I couldn't believe that goody-goody exterior you've got going on. I knew there had to be something underneath it. Of course, I figured you were probably a freak in bed, because there had to be a reason Miller kept you around, but I was hoping there was something else as well. I figured you had to be bad somewhere deep down. Maybe, I said. No fucking maybe about it, baby. The fact that you hang out with the three of us means you're bad on the inside, even if you don't know it. And I don't mean bad like hot or fine. I mean bad like bad. Sure, I said. He waved a finger at me. You don't believe me, 'cause you don't want to believe me. But you were one of us for a reason. Okay, I said. Only, sure, I'll admit, you're probably not as bad as the rest of us. I said. I mean, you know what I was. Close enough, anyway. I was the hero, the tip of the spear, all that shit. But you don't get to be the tip of the spear by being a nice guy. Spears aren't nice. And Aaron, I can't. It was me, you know. I was the one who pulled her into that. He gave a look of naked appeal. It was so startling I didn't know how to respond. It was my fault she ended up what she was. I dragged her into the shit, and I left her there. 'Cause it wasn't me doing it, you know. I just rounded up the bad guys and dumped them on her. She was the one who, you know, she was the one getting her hands dirty. Uh-huh, I said. And then she got mixed back up with Noel. It's a fucking small world, isn't it? And then, but we thought all that shit was behind her. Until she told me she was seeing him again, back in May. She told me she'd looked him up and they'd started talking again. Long distance mainly, but still. And then, she didn't know what he was up to. She said she didn't know if she could trust him or not. She said he was starting to go kind of stalker on her. So she got a permit and a handgun, and then we went to the fucking range to do some weapons training. He looked up at me. It was an accident. I swear to God it was an accident. It was her weapon. It wasn't loaded. She'd told me it wasn't loaded. But, you know, sometimes I think she did it on purpose. She started the fight, and then she gave me a loaded weapon, and then she kind of bumped into me, and the next thing I knew, the gun had gone off and she was clutching her chest, and... That seems awfully convoluted to me. Yeah, it sounds like bullshit, doesn't it? But that's how it happened. I swear to God, that's how it happened. I was pissed at her, sure, but I never would have shot her. He gave me a shrewd look. You thought I did it on purpose, didn't you? Yes, I said. Can't say I blame you. And I keep going over it over and over again in my mind. But I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't. Okay, I said. I believe you. And I did. Or, rather, I believed that both of them had been careless and angry and harboring homicidal/suicidal thoughts, and a gun had gone off as a result. Anyway, he said, I was just with Erin. Looks like both she and Noel are going to be released. They'll probably be charged with negligent discharge of a firearm or something like that, but they're probably not looking at jail time. That's good, I said. I guess. For now, Frank added. The police don't care much about them, but that Heather woman is all over them. If there's anything to dig up, she's going to get it. And it won't look good for either of them then. No, I said. I'm afraid not. Yeah, he said. Well, I'll get out of your hair. I just wanted to bring you up to speed. Oh, and let you know that I'll probably be available again soon. He winked at me. So when Miller dumps you so he can keep mooning over Erin, you know where to go. I said. Thanks. Anytime. See you around, okay? And take care of yourself, Ro. Thanks, I said. You too. And I meant it. I still didn't like Frank, but I was developing a strange respect for him. Chapter 39. I spent the next week growing increasingly restless in Alex's apartment. Frank dropped by several times to check on me. Erin came by once to thank me. All that exultation that had filled her when we'd been in the water together had drained away, leaving her looking even smaller and frailer than usual. Noel, she said, had gone back to San Diego. Their relationship still appeared to be in the same tortured state of love-hate abusive codependency. They hadn't actually gotten married, she said. She looked sad when she said it. She wasn't sure what she herself was going to do. No one at work was very pleased about her disappearing without warning and then getting involved in a shootout at a state park. Her employment might be about to be terminated. She didn't know what she'd do if that happened. I guess she'd go running back to Noel. I didn't say that. Heather also came by. She expressed her admiration for my lurid bruising. She also said she was going after high-energy solutions with everything she had. She'd been digging into Noel's backstory and contacts, and discovering all kinds of dirty dealings with Iraqi and Russian oil concerns. She seemed far too cheerful about it to my mind. Of course, if I were her, I'd probably be cheerful about it as well. Alex and I spent the week being carefully polite to each other and dancing around the subject of our relationship's future without ever actually discussing it. It seemed pretty clear to me that Alex was now more in love with Erin than ever, even as she seemed to have been pulled inexorably back into Noel's orbit, and also that he hated himself for that. Unfortunately, hating yourself for loving someone often only makes you love them more. By the end of the week, I was hobbling around reasonably well, and said I was ready to drive back to Georgia. I said I'd drive the car back for you, Alex said, and I meant it. I'll do it. I know you would, but I really think I'll be okay to do the drive myself. Inside, I was less confident, but I was also desperate to be gone. Okay, but if it's too much for you, call me, okay? I don't care where you are. Just call me and I'll come get you, okay? I will, I said, and thank you. Of course. You're a good man, I said. You know that, right? No, I'm not. Alex was washing the dishes after yet another meal of takeout. He turned so that his back was to me. I'm not. You are. Maybe you don't know it yet, but you will someday. And in the meantime, I want you to remember that I believe it, even if you don't. Thanks. His voice was thick, like maybe he was about to start crying. I don't know why, though. I've been a shit boyfriend to you. But you've been a good friend. His shoulders shuddered. Is that what we are? He asked, speaking into the sink full of dirty dishes. Friends. Yes, I said. We were friends first, and we're friends still. At least I hope so. So do I. So do... Shit! He'd been holding his one remaining plate as he spoke. Now it slithered out of his soapy hands, balanced for a moment on the edge of the counter, and then slid, rolling and spinning, onto the floor, where it smashed into a dozen pieces. We both stared at it. I don't want that to be a sign, Alex said. I don't want that to mean that things are broken between us. Things have been broken for a long time, I said. Things were broken before we ever got together. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to think we were doomed before we ever got together. Neither do I said. And maybe we're not. Maybe things will work out in the end. But right now things are pretty messed up. Maybe we need to take a little time to fix them. I'm pretty messed up, you mean, he said. I'm still all fucked up over Aaron, and I need to get my head straight before you'll want to have anything to do with me. You don't want to get dragged down into all that darkness, all that dirt that I'm up to my neck in. It's not like that. It kinda is, he said. And you're right, Rowena. I'm still so fucked up about what happened with her and what happened in Iraq that I can't do anything else. I can't be there for you the way you need me to, because all I can think about is being there for Aaron. All I can think about is being her knight in shining armor, even when she's running after another man. Pretty fucking pathetic, huh? Or noble, I said. She needs a knight in shining armor. She really does. I just don't know if it will be enough. Yeah, me neither. But I have to try. For her, and also for me. I have to try to put things right for both of us. We have to redeem ourselves if we're ever going to get any peace. I don't know if we'll ever be able to do it, but we have to try. You do, I agreed. Yeah, let's clean up this mess before we hurt ourselves. I fetched the broom and dustpan. Alex swept up the broken plate and then wiped up the soapy water that had gotten all over the floor. It needed mopping anyway, he said. And who cares about plates? Overrated, if you ask me. Yeah, I said. He stepped close and put his arms around me. Do you remember when I helped you pack up in that shitty apartment in New Jersey? And I said I was tempted to fuck you right there on the counter, but I wasn't going to, because I thought it might ruin a beautiful friendship. Yes, I said. I kind of feel the same way right now. Me too, I said. Although I don't think I'd be up for anything that acrobatic right now anyway. He laughed into my ear. I really do love you, Rowena. I know, I said. I love you too. But it's not enough, is it? It's not the right kind of love, is it? Not right now, I said. Who knows what it will be in the future? You know, I've been thinking about how what you felt for Aaron was a kind of lightning strike love. And it sounds like what she has for Noel is lightning strike love too, in its own sick way. And I've had my own brushes with lightning in the past as well. So now we're all singed and scarred, and we're looking for love without the lightning. But we need it in order to function. We're like the forests here out west. We need lightning strikes and wildfires in order to stay healthy. And right now, maybe what we need is a lot of fire to burn away all the old bad brush and clear things out so that we can start growing again. Alex's arms tightened around me. I like that thought. We haven't ruined things. We're just waiting for things to go right, like fine wine or something. Or a forest, like you said, waiting for lightning to strike and the rain to come down so that it can grow. Yeah, I said. We haven't ruined anything at all. Chapter 40. I set off early the next morning. Alex stood and watched me drive away, after making me promise 3 times that I'd call him if I had so much as a twinge of doubt about my ability to make it back to Georgia. He'd drop everything, he promised, and come get me. I'd promised that I'd do so, and I meant it. but I really hoped it wasn't necessary. I'd also meant it when I'd said that I didn't think things were broken forever between us, and we were still friends, and maybe one day we would be more than that again. Right now, though, I felt raw and sore inside. Burned, one might say. Because while I'd meant all that, I also knew that it wasn't the whole story. Alex had a journey he had to take, and it seemed he wouldn't be able to do it with me by his side. Everyone deserved a shot at redemption, and maybe Alex would take his someday, but not with me. Not with me. The pain from that thought was worse than I would have expected. And maybe I had my own problems I needed to face. Maybe all my doubts about what kind of love I felt for Alex, and what kind of future we had, and where I was on the Kinsey scale, and all that kind of stuff, weren't really about love at all. Maybe they were about the fact that deep down, I thought Frank was right. Deep down, I thought I was bad, just like him and Alex and Noel and Aaron. Or maybe I wanted to be a part of that badness. Maybe my need to help people was a way to touch that badness without letting it claim me. Dima and Alex had both said they wanted to protect me from the dirt and darkness and danger that had damaged them so badly. But maybe I needed it. I needed something to balance out all the goodness I wore on the outside. I was pretty sure the goodness was real, but it seemed to crave contact with real badness, like I could only function if there was some kind of Manichaean battle between good and evil going on inside me. And right now, I wasn't sure it was a battle I could win. "Don't cry," I ordered myself. "You'll be a traffic hazard." I brought up my music app on my phone while stopped at a light. More Like Her came on. No, no, no. I brought up another playlist. Shake It Out started playing. Okay, this was better. The light turned green and I pulled forward. It was followed by Never Let Me Go. No! Clearly this isn't working. At the next light, I shut off my music app and turned on the radio to a random station. There was a report about traffic, followed by some banter by the hosts. Ugh. I hated morning drive time radio host banter. "And now," said the male host, just as I was reaching for the dial to change the station, "let's go back to 1982. Shelley, do you remember what you were doing in 1982? "Being born," said Shelley. Both hosts laughed. "Well, for those of us with a little more experience with the world, this song will bring back happy memories. Maybe it'll bring back happy memories for your parents, Shelley. I bet if you ask them, they'll tell you this album had something to do with you being born, or at least what happened 9 months earlier." "Maybe," said Shelley, with the voice of a woman trying to be a good sport. "So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Gypsy by Fleetwood Mac. Let the memories come rolling back." The song started playing. I knew it. I just hadn't thought about it in a long time. But right now, as I was driving through this not very nice part of California, leaving behind a man I loved and who loved me, but not enough to be with me, and heading towards somewhere I didn't really want to go, it seemed like the perfect song. I didn't even know why. It just did. Because lightning strikes, I told myself. Sometimes it only strikes once, sometimes it strikes twice, but it does strike. And sometimes when it does, it brings cleansing, not destruction. You just have to be in the right place at the right time for it to hit you. I drove for a couple of hours before stopping for a break. So far, my knee was holding up pretty well. I had a long way to go, but I was starting to feel optimistic that I would get there. A message popped up on my phone as I was getting back in the car. "Darling Ina," it said, "Mama has agreed to try treatment in America. She is insisting that I come with her, smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. We are starting the process of getting visas. We may be with you in America this winter. Hugs and kisses, Dima." The end. Author's note. While Total Immersion is fiction, like all the books in the Dr. Rowena Halley series, it has a basis in fact. The Oil for Food program was real, as was the $10 billion in bribes and kickbacks that was collected around it. The involvement of individuals from the U.S. military in using it for personal gain following the 2003 invasion is a product of my own imagination, as far as I know. The U.S. program of enhanced interrogation at black sites in Iraq and other places has been extensively documented. The book Consequence, a Memoir by Eric Fair, about an interrogator in Iraq, is an excellent look into how good people found themselves doing bad things. Enhanced Interrogation, Inside the Minds and Motives of the Islamic Terrorists Trying to Destroy America, by James E. Mitchell and Bill Harlow, provides an insider account of the creation of the program of enhanced interrogation by one of its founders. The Lonely Soldier, The Private War of Women Serving in Iraq, by Helen Benedict, has stories of women serving during the early years of the invasion and their struggles, including the experiences of female MPs guarding prisoners. A useful book on the war from a journalist's perspective is War Journal, My 5 Years in Iraq, by Richard Engel, the Middle East bureau chief for NBC News. And Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army, by Jeremy Scahill, is a gripping exposé of the actions of private contractors in the war. All the places described in the story are based on real locations, although I may have taken some liberties in some instances to raise the excitement level. Once again, I owe a debt of gratitude to the Writers Detective Q&A Facebook group and the Writers Detective Bureau podcast for patiently answering my questions about police procedure. All of these sources have been very helpful during the writing of this book. All errors and inaccuracies are, of course, my own. Sid Stark. That was Total Immersion, an academic thriller, Book 6 in the Dr. Rowena Halley series, by Sid Stark, copyright 2021, published by Helia Press, narrated by Sid Stark, production copyright 2021. Thank you for listening to Total Immersion. To find out more about the series and the characters, sign up for my mailing list, and get your free story, please visit my website at sidstarkauthor.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter at @SidStarkAuthor.